Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Boles. I serve as the Director of Learning and Engagement here at La Jolla Music Society. I am beyond excited to be on stage with the four of you, mainly because I'm so excited for tonight. So this is going to be a wonderful evening. Just a quick introduction for anyone who doesn't know these great faces. We have Mark Dover, who's a Grammy-nominated clarinetist who plays with the Imani Winds and is on faculty at the Curtis Institute of Music. Yeah, we can clap all night. Composer and bassist Michael Thurber. Multi-instrumentalist and Grammy-nominated Louis Cato. Also band leader of Stephen Colbert's The Late Show. And of course, Tessa Lark, violinist, award-winning, beloved SummerFest artist. The list goes on and on. So I thought we could start maybe, since the whole evening really is about merging the genres and your backgrounds. Can we dive into where you've come from and how you grew up in music? And maybe, Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go Blue. There's usually one person. Yeah, there we go. And I didn't come from a musical family, but my mom, in her former life before she had kids, was a stage actress. And so I grew up kind of immersed in theater and the arts. And Ann Arbor was such a great place to grow up. Our public music program was really great. It was a school district where everyone had access to a free instrument and everyone had to play. So it was kind of like, honestly, I took piano lessons when I was young, but didn't really quite take. But then 5th grade, we had to choose an instrument, and I had a crush on a girl in my class, and she chose the clarinet, so I chose the clarinet. And that was kind of the thing. I was doing musical theater. I was singing and doing that, and then my voice changed, and I kind of just gravitated towards the clarinet. And then the other thing about Michigan is we have these great camps, and there's this place called Interlochen, which is actually where Michael and I met in high school. So I spent my summers there in high school and eventually went and did my senior year there. And it was kind of from that point forward that I knew I wanted to do it. And I went to college at U of M and then moved to New York about 14 years ago to do my master's and was freelancing in New York for a few years. And then about 8 years ago now, I started playing with Imani Winds, which is an amazing woodwind quintet. And that's kind of my main thing, but I try to write my own music and play in different styles and all that. So that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. Michael, how about you?
I grew up in the middle of nowhere in in a little town in Indiana, so I didn't have access to really anything. I didn't know that you could make a living playing music. Nobody in my family had ever done it, but I was just really into it, and I was just very self-motivated. And so before the internet, I would go to the library and rent VHSs of Charles Mingus and Miles Davis and Karajan conducting the Beethoven symphonies with Berlin Phil, and I would just teach myself. I would just watch the videos, and I had a bunch of instructional books for the bass, and really just sort of taught myself until I got to the point where, through a random series of events, I was able to go to Interlochen, which is where I met Mark and went to high school there, and then that sort of set me on my path professionally. But I feel like, in a nutshell, the reason why I've always sort of been interested and drawn to a lot of different styles of music, to sort of tap into the theme there, is that I never knew any different. Some of my friends that I met in college were from these long lineages of musical families where all of their parents and grandparents were classical musicians, so they grew up and it was music is classical music, or vice versa. I have friends that grew up playing in the church or grew up playing jazz, and it's music was one thing. And I think what I used to think was a big weakness, but now I think is my greatest strength, is that I just grew up sort of listening to whatever I was drawn to and then learning how to play it. And I didn't really know that was right or wrong. It was just sort of natural,
Yeah.
Louis, how'd you get your start?
Banging on pots and pans. Until my mother, I don't know, I have a lot of respect and curiosity for the parent who says, oh, the child is banging on pots and pans, let's buy the 2-year-old a drum set. But that's what my mom did, and I'm so grateful. And I played every day, and kind of like him, also grew up in the middle of nowhere in a small town called Albemarle, North Carolina. And I know, woohoo! Not all at once. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was really drawn to it. There's not a point in my memory that goes before. There's nothing before music for me. I My mom says I practiced every day, uh, from 2 to 4 until she let me start coming and playing in church with her. And I grew up just singing and playing drums together always, and then with her. And then I started playing other instruments as I got older. And yeah, I think I'm a very curious person, and obviously pretty. Yeah. Obviously pretty musically wired. So the combination of those two things led me down a path to eventually go to music school for a year in Boston at Berklee School of Music, and started working pretty immediately, and from there moved to New York, and have just had a wonderful journey so far, getting to work with lots of incredible people like this.
Tessa, can you tell us a little bit about your growing up?
Yeah, this is maybe a rare stage where Ann Arbor is the largest city that any of us grew up in. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, in Richmond, Kentucky, and a lot of you are familiar with my story, but born and raised there. Neither of my parents are professional musicians, but my dad plays banjo, and so my first encounter with music was bluegrass, and I played the mandolin when I was 4. And the first tune I learned was Boil 'em Cabbage Down. But as it goes, a lot of formal training just tends to be classical. That's what's easy to find. And so the teacher that my parents found for me, because I wasn't necessarily banging on pots and pans, but I was just trying to, make music however I could. And my parents saw that I was really musically inclined. So when I was 6.5, I started on the violin. My parents say I declared myself a violinist 6 months later. And, we never had to have that conversation. What am I going to do for my future? Wow. What am I going to be? It's just music. And it resonated with me when you said there was nothing before music. It's just, that was my best friend, my favorite toy. And I brought the mandolin to show and tell. This is just how I was musically inclined in kindergarten. And then when recess happened, I just went to a corner, literally faced the corner and kept practicing. And that was what I wanted to do, So that took me to a lot of different places. Went to a pre-college program in Cincinnati, a 2-hour drive north from where I grew up. And that was a Saturday program, so I went to public school still in Kentucky, ended up in Boston at New England Conservatory, right nearby Berklee. Wow. And then found my way to the Juilliard School in 2015, which is where I met Michael Thurber, actually. And then really liked what Michael was up to, so much so that we started dating. And we've been together for 8 years now. I met Mark just before that, separately through some other musical mutual friends. And then I think, Michael, you met Lewis around the same year we met, but just later on for the Late Show Band in 2015. And so we all have been connected in some way since 8 years, but this will be the first time that we're all playing together, and it's just been miraculous and so much fun.
I'm so excited. I know, there's applause out there. Go for it. So tell us a little bit about, I don't know who wants to take this question, but tell us about what we're about to experience tonight, and how did this idea come together?
Yeah, well, we all are people that live by the motto that there's only good music and bad music. and you want to play the good kind as much as possible. And so all of us sort of have that in common. And so, we've played together in different formats, but we've never all had like sort of a meeting of the minds like this before. And so we'd always wanted to try it because, we knew it would be amazing. And the way it came about was we were hanging out with Tessa and I were playing with Inon at a festival last January in St. Bart's, which is not too bad of a place if you get a chance to go there. And we were playing, and in St. Bart's, you really do more sitting on the beach having cocktails than you do playing. But we were sitting there and we were hanging out, and Inon was telling us about Synergy Week, which is this week of the festival, which is all about musical exploration and bringing together people from different musical backgrounds and seeing what happens. And he was telling us about it, and he said, it'd be really great to have y'all if you want to come out. Like, who would you want to play with? And, it literally took us like 30 seconds. While we were sitting there, it was like Louis Cato and Mark Dover. And so that's how it came about. And it really... it sounds so corny, but it really is just the honest truth. This truly is like the absolute embodiment of like the idea of this Synergy Week. This is like major exploration.
Yes.
We're playing stuff that we've never played before.
That's correct.
And this is one-off. Like, we put all of this music together just for tonight. And so whenever you do that, the energy builds in this way that's super special, because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be crazy. It's going to be awesome, And with these guys, these are all people that are just like, you'll hear tonight, are just phenomenally accomplished musicians. Each of these people could do a 90-minute set alone. And then when you put us all together, it's like there's just so much camaraderie and so much talent, I think we all were just sort of smiling all day today rehearsing.
Mark, maybe you can speak to this. How do you pare down? Like Michael's just saying, you all can play 90 minutes solid. So how do you distill that into maybe a 90-minute set with the four of you? What was that like today?
Yeah, so I think Michael's idea from the beginning, and all our ideas is that we would kind of have the band, right, the four of us, but then, if you think of like 4 factorial, right, 4 times 3 times 2 times, how many different permutations can we have? So we break it down, and we do some things duo, and we do some things trio. There's some unaccompanied solo things too. And it's all kind of interspersed within the evening. And also the kind of style or genre of music is also mixed up. So you might hear something like really classical or Baroque music, followed by like a fiddle tune, followed by like a jazz standard, and also our original music that's interspersed. So yeah, it's just kind of like a melting pot. And I don't know if this was kind of a question for you, Mike, but when we were at Interlochen, they did this thing called collage, and it was this kind of like musical review where all of the different groups would be on the stage at the same time, and like there was no applause in between the different numbers. So it would go from like a symphony orchestra to like a theater troupe doing a scene from Hamlet to like a visual artist like showing their work, and it was this kind of thing. So I think we were both kind of immersed in that cross collaborative spirit from early on, as all of us were, and so I think we're trying to kind of channel that and put that out into the world tonight. So.
And Tessa, you're known to our audience more as a classical musician, although last year you did an excerpt from Stradgrass, which was incredible as a pre-concert treat for everyone. Is it easy? I mean, I know you're well-versed in many genres, but is it easy for you to go into a setting like this, or do you crave a little bit of structure? And maybe a question for all of you, if you're looking for that structure, how do you still leave time for magic up there? How do you make sure that you're not sucking away all the spontaneity?
That is such an incredible question. And one will probably still be asking ourselves as we're playing on the stage tonight. I think the beautiful thing about the four of us here is that we all know everybody really well, and we all kind of have guessed how one or another operates. And so we could sort of come in knowing what we needed ourselves and what the others might need, and also are comfortable enough to ask one another for things that we might need. But to answer your question directly, is it easy? I guess I would be curious to hear how everyone else feels about this too, but I think, like Michael was saying, we just like to play the good kind of music, and we're often just walking down the sidewalk, going to a Parakeet Cafe with all sorts of different styles of music floating through our heads, and so it's kind of always there. So in that way, yes, it feels just really natural to play a bunch of different types of great music, but I will say that being free and having a looser type of structure in terms of not having exact notes on a page, that is a muscle that needs to be toned. And after being here and having played, recitals and exclusively written music for the past 3 weeks, that muscle maybe atrophied a little bit and needed some working out. So in that way, it's just putting some time and thought and effort into it. But it's also just kind of inputting, I don't know, just like riding the wave, the incredible musical wave that's on the stage here. But I think it's also a collective effort to sort of figure out how much of the set we do need structured so that we can feel free for another portion of the set. So tonight, I guess it's kind of rare. We do have a set list, and we have predicted how long all the songs are going, but that actually is a great springboard to have, because depending on the vibe of the audience, if y'all are really into it and applauding and participating, then we might just go off the page. But because we have that structure, we actually feel comfortable. It's like Stravinsky, a lot of composers, they say to actually be your most creative, you give yourself more limitations, because it's like choice anxiety, right? If you can choose anything on the menu, it's harder. But it's like you can only have vegetables today, then you get creative with it. So it's kind of the same way. We give ourselves a structure to be free within.
Hey. Very nice. Sounds like it's been an amazing collaborative process. Louis, I was wondering if you could talk about some of the times in your life where you learned about collaboration, and who's been sort of inspirational as a teacher in that sense.
The times in my life where I learned about collaboration. I mean, I can skip to part 2 and maybe come back to part 1, because that's a low-hanging fruit. The people that have just been close inspirations to me have been actually there's a range. Some of the people I met in my small town, I was kind of the only musician. So I think from 0 to 18, there was a lot of solo learning and exploration, if you will. Lots of playing, by yourself. And I remember getting really excited when I got to Berkeley at 18 years old, and found that there's a whole community of people all over the world that feel the same way I do about music, and we can make music together, and that can be really cool. And you find things, and there's so much that music is life, music is connections, it's relationship, and in so much there is in the same way that there's only so much that you can get to by yourself. I really had the distinct feeling round about senior year in high school that there was more, but I didn't know what that was. I just had no way of knowing. I would play with my mother in church, but that was a very sort of confined space. And it really opened up a whole lot for me when I got to move into a community of other musicians and play with people and form bonds and friendships, because that's the way our existence works is humans, and music is a real special fast track, I find, of connecting with another human being. So a lot of the people that really shaped my identity as far as collaboration were people that I met when I first went to Berkeley and Boston, who were some incredible musicians. Christian Scott, who's an amazing trumpet player, and record label owner now, and fashion model. He does a bunch of things. Esperanza Spalding, we started together. Found some incredible things. Elizabeth Zeman, Godwin Lewis, James Casey, and then later Dave Fusinski from Screaming Headless Torsos, and from Michelle Indeggio-Cello, Bobby McFerrin, Marcus Miller, George Duke, rest in peace, was a really influential mentor of mine. Gosh knows, the list goes on and on. I feel really grateful even just thinking about it. But I'm a big. It made all of these relationships have just continued to cultivate a deep-rooted belief in the power and the magic of collaboration for me.
Well, we'll all get to see that on stage. Before we end, I'm curious if each of you can kind of share some exciting things that you have coming up. Is there anything that people can travel to go see, or will you be playing together again? And what's up next? Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, in particular, it's hard to think of something, but it's for me, the summers are always kind of the time to reflect, and I'm not usually as busy. But starting like September 1st, everything just goes wild with the touring and just other projects. So just if you markdovermusic.com, you can see what I'm up to. Yeah.
I have a musical that's hopefully going to be on Broadway in New York in the spring.
Woo!
So if you're in New York, look out for Goddess the musical. If it won't be if it's not this spring, it'll be the fall. So definitely in the next year. That's the thing that I'm most excited about. And I have an album coming out in February that singles will start coming out for next month or October, so 2 months from now. So look out.
Hey, come on. I just released an album last Friday called Reflections, so that's out and available now anywhere you listen to music, or and some performances coming up. I think the Monterey Jazz Festival. I'll be performing a set at in September. I think we've got another performance at Songbird in Washington D.C. in November. Some other things coming up that escape me. There's some what is that? I'm doing a guest appearance with the Soul Rebels at legendary Blue Note NYC, and that's coming up soon. I think that's in a couple weeks. And what's that?
That's a lot.
Oh yeah. There's a bunch of
busy. And
Busy,
if the
busy.
writer strike ends, hopefully back with the Late Show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any day now. Any day now. Thank you for the well
You're
wishes.
keeping yourself occupied. Jeez.
Oh yeah. When life gives you lemons, make music.
What about you, Tessa? You just had an album come out not too long ago.
Yeah, that was May 5th, the Stradgrass sessions. No relation to Cinco de Mayo, but that's when it was released. And Yeah, you're probably tired of me. I'm finally leaving La Jolla after 3 weeks of being here.
We could never be.
I never want to leave. It's one of my favorite places to be. We're even sticking out this storm with y'all tomorrow. We're in it. We're in it for the long haul with you all. Let's see. I have a couple days at home, and then on Wednesday head to Cincinnati. Have a couple of shows there. Then playing a project I've been working on and will be for the rest of the year. It is the centennial of the writing of 6 sonatas by Eugène Tsai, a Belgian composer. If you were here for opening night, I'll probably say this again in the concert too. Blake Pouliot began the entire SummerFest with a movement from Tsai. It was called Sunrise, really magical music. So I've been working on all 6 of those really virtuosic pieces and writing supplementary music of my own to go with that. And we'll be working on recording that. And I'm playing that at Ravinia and Little Island in New York, lots of different venues, and a couple of concerto commissions, so I'll be doing some premieres of new works in Alabama. I also got my first official composition commission from a violist. Yeah, wow. She's doing it. Thank you very much. And yeah, she's doing a project of solo viola works by female composers. So I'm just starting to write a little bit and still doing all the traveling, and Michael and I get to play together on occasion. Sometimes I've started running a series. It's a 5-weekend series in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and I'm always bringing Michael there, and I have the pleasure of having Mark Dover come for one of those shows too. And someday when you're not so busy, Lewis, I'll get him there.
I'll be there.
Yeah, it's just a fun life of lemons and music.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for sharing your energy with us right now, and we're so excited to see you on stage. It's going to be a really fun night.
Can't
so,
wait.
big round of
Let's
applause
have
for
fun
these great
tonight,
artists.
y'all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.